Is it a monster? Is it the savior? What is the beast of AI?
Welcome to the show. Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hello, welcome to this episode of Your Ultimate Life. This is exciting. This is an episode on one of the topics of the day, which is AI. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody knows what's going on a little bit. But I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe what's changed for you. Like what's actually happening in your life different for AI. I use it a lot. I talk to ChatGPT. I use that mostly. But there's lots. There's Grok, there's Gemini, there's Perplexity, and some others. And then there are these custom ones. And all of them can be used to build custom bots that do different things for you. And that's really interesting and powerful. And so what I want to ask is, what has AI changed for you? There are ethical challenges that are there. There's misuse of information, stuff that is out there and real. There is fear about it. And there's lots of, who knows about what will happen and what's coming next. It's like it's scary as all heck or interesting or both. So let me tell you what I do with it. And I want you to think about what you're doing with it. Now, when I talk to at least ChatGPT, here's what it tells me, that 90-something%, maybe 95, of the uses are, write emails, send messages, find directions. We use it for that. Joy puts sometimes ingredients that she has in the cupboard, and she'll say, I want an Italian dish. Give me a recipe for an Italian dish of using this stuff. And Joy's a great cook. And it's fun to have those kind of things. And after we've had dinner, usually it's dinner stuff, I'm just blown away by all the cool stuff. Yeah, I got this off AI. So she's done all kinds of that stuff, and it's fabulous. And that's what 90+% is to do. When we were in London just a 3 weeks ago, the best way to get here and the tube stations and the public transport and what museums are near this and near that, all that stuff we use it, and it's fabulous. It completely replaced Google and almost completely replaced Google Maps because it does things so well and so fast. And yeah, it made some mistakes, and you have to be careful. And sometimes I double check with maps. But anyway, all that stuff is really good. It's really fun and fast, and it's simple. And that's not all. The other 5% of people like me are digging in and using it for substantive things. So I used it for a lot of research that I would have used Google for, but Google stuff is old, a week old, a day old, sometimes much older, and it isn't updated as fast. ChatGPT 5, and probably the others, I'm not as familiar with those, has the ability to dig in real time and get much of the very latest stuff off the internet, and does a much better job, at least in my experience, than Google. So my question for you is to think about is, what has it actually changed for you? Because I see it as a huge opportunity, and I see it also as a massive danger. And let's talk about that. So I want to know what you use it for, and I want you to think about it. And are you using it in the most powerful way? Because, when we talk about all the jobs that it might replace, tons of jobs, there's already robots performing medical surgeries. And there's already in, I think it was Japan, Joy told me, that they have furry and fuzzy covered robots that are kind of in the shape and size of large dogs, animals, but because they're incredibly strong, they're helping move patients from beds to chairs and patients that have mobility issues and all that kind of stuff. But this episode isn't really about talking about all the amazing things, although I would recommend you look that up because it just blows me away. But we saw that coming with, the phone, Hey Siri, or Alexa, or Dorkstick, whatever the name of the other ones are. Our ability to talk to them and have them talk back. And, a few years ago, we thought that was science fiction. And then, of course, it went into the dark side that we're going to be these robots that took care of our household stuff, vacuumed and cleaned and everything. And then suddenly they get sentient and go berserk. And, that's been the fodder of who knows how many movies. Well, that's right around the corner. So what has AI changed for you? So I've told you the trivial, and I say trivial but they're not really trivial. Those are uses that we have for that. They save us a ton of time. And that is one of the biggest blessings that I see because it's on the phone. The phone's with me all the time. And sometimes I use the version where it talks to me. That's kind of interesting, where we have conversations, but I don't think that's as good as the one that writes. My experience with the talking one hasn't been as complete as the one that's writing, but that's just me. So it's saving a ton of time. I have it help me write articles. I'll give it outlines and content that I want, and then it does a good job of outlining. I also use the dictation feature a lot. It's where I'll dictate stream of consciousness thinking about an article or a chapter or a speech I have to give, and I know exactly what I want to talk about. And then I ask it to organize it for me. I need a 30-minute, 40-minute speech, and here's the topics, and here's the bullets, and here's the outcome, and here's the tone I want, encouraging or strong or strident or confrontational. And it does a pretty good job getting that started. And sometimes I have to refine it. When I used it for writing, my first experience was that it wrote these really clipped, bullety forms that was awkward and stupid and isn't how I talked at all. So I had to work with it and giving it instructions about how to write prose and how to write paragraphs that made sense, 3 or 4 sentences. But it learns really fast. And in my case, I have 1 million, 2, 3, 4 million words that I have input into my database, my LLM, that are my canon, my books. I've written 2 books now, and I'm working on 23 and 24. And by putting those in there, it has a good sense of who I am and what I'm trying to do. 1,000 podcast episodes. Haven't put all those in there yet, but a few hundred I have. And talks that I've given and so forth. So it has a really good sense of my message in the world. And I've asked Chat GPT what percentage of people are using it the way I do, and it's less than 0.1% or less that are using it for the kind of deep research that I do and writing and outlining and podcast things and that kind of stuff. And to challenge me, I have it challenge me and tell me where I'm missing stuff and where I'm weak and what is missing from my arguments and all that kind of stuff. So those are the ways that I use it. And none of those are surprising, but I find it to be a very fast learning thing. And, people talk all the time about AI hallucinating, and it certainly can. But I find that the better my input is, the old computer GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, was the old saying clear back in the Fortran days when, you were programming computers with punch cards. I did that when I was in high school, right? I had to write some Fortran programs and get punch cards made and that kind of thing. And that was fun. That was my first experience with Fortran as a senior in high school in the early 70s. So that was interesting. And this has devolved so much since then. But my question is, some say this is freedom and some say it's a trap. Now, I've got a Thursday new addition to the podcast. So it's 2 days a week, Tuesday and Friday. And a couple of weeks ago, I started adding a Thursday episode. And that one's specifically for coaches because AI is going to disrupt a lot of industries. And we'll talk about employment and what it does for us in a minute or to us. But this particular thing, because I've got a new book coming on the 23rd of October, Coaching and the Rise of AI, and it's exploring specifically what AI is doing to the coaching industry. And it's a massive upheaval in the coaching industry. And people that don't see that or know it are going to get out of work, are going to get washed off the table. Now, that's going to happen in other industries as well, which is why I'm doing this episode, is to invite you to consider what AI is doing in your life. So how are you using it? I still talk to people and I ask that question, how are you using it? And the answer is I'm not. And it's not just trying to stay hip for the room. It is the core of what this is it can save enormous amounts of time. Mundane, redundant things can be done now quickly. And I really appreciate that because it saves me a ton of time. And time is our only non-renewable resource, right? Now, meditation creates time for me. And here's why. And that's way different than AI, but let me lay this groundwork so you can understand. People, I have a long morning ritual, 2.5 hours, and a big piece of that is prayer and meditation. And people say, well, I don't have time to do that. But here's what I notice in prayer and meditation is that everything gets clear. And so when I start my day, even 2 hours later than quote, I could start it, excuse me, because things are clear, decisions are fast. Decisions have way less redos, way less hesitation. Oh, should I do this? And that way saves more time for me than the 2 hours that it took me to get ready, 2.5 hours. So for me, that meditation creates time because then in the rest of the day, I can get 3 times amount of stuff done that I could have gotten done or would otherwise have gotten done because of clarity, which things are important, which things are first, decisions are quicker, everything just boom, 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 boom. And that saves a lot of time. So when I go to thinking about in the context of AI, excuse me, this does exactly the same thing. It writes really well if you train it. If you teach it how to write for you, it writes really well. It will write in the tone and manner that you want. It will, after you train it, it will write in your voice. And so you'll read it and it sounds an awful lot like you. Not to start with. Not even in the first week or month. You have to train it because it's just a model and it goes and looks at stuff. But if you train it with conversations that you have, with output that you have, or books that you've written and so forth, it's amazing, I think. And it writes really well for me. So that saves a ton of time. And what that does, some people are worried about that, but I find it liberating because that gives me more time to think. It gives me more time to create. Let me give you an example. When I was in the C-suite, a C-suite executive leadership position, COO or CEO, one of the ways I got a lot more done than most is I organized my delegation processes really carefully. And I trusted my people. So I set my organizations up so that I had someone I could just give stuff to, and they had all the authority and stuff to get it done. So when I delegated, I took it off my plate. And that's how it's supposed to work in my mind. And when I help people with leadership, understanding delegation, setting it up properly, and helping get loops, open cycles closed is really important and key to productivity. This is the same way. I can go there and I can to AI and I can get stuff done much more quickly than I otherwise could. And speed isn't the only answer, but it is what level of work do I want to be doing? Do I want to be doing $10 an hour work or $20 an hour work? Or do I want to be doing $1,000 an hour work? I find it's not about more. It's also about satisfaction. I have a mission, this, to reach 300 million people. And with a message of worth, your worth, identity as a divine being, a child of God or the universe, P, your possibility because of your worth and identity, ownership, WIPOS, W-I-P-O-S, your ownership of your life, and sovereignty, which means you are the sole determiner. The buck stops with you. And it stops with you whether you admit it or not. If you've handed control of your life over to somebody else or some other idea or someone else's plan for your life, it still stops with you because you or we handed it over. So you know that. We've talked about that on other shows. So I want you to think about what your opportunities are. What are you using this massive tool for? Because I've been using it extensively in the last 5 months. I wrote this book, Coaching in the Rise of AI, which will be out in a couple of weeks. And I used it a lot to do research about the state of the coaching industry right now, about what coaching is, what people do with it, the formulas and frameworks, and what's going to be replaced by very friendly, empathetic sounding, powerful bots that are going to be able to provide probably 95% of what coaching has been up to this point. And then I explored what coaches need to become if they're going to stay relevant and stay employed. Your life is the same way. What can you delegate? What can you outsource? What can you give up so that you can focus on the most powerful stuff you have? Now, that's not to say that mowing the lawn isn't fun. If you mow the lawn and during that time you meditate and you really enjoy being in the garden and the sun and, that kind of thing is powerful. It is beautiful. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, okay, everything's efficiency and just more. Scrap that. But I want you to think about your life in terms of what you actually do. How many tasks are there that you do that, just got to get through this, that you could, have someone help you with? I hope that email's good. All of those kinds of things can be done. Outlines and courses and talks and emails and productivity, even around the house. Vacation planning, if you want. I've never used it for that, but Joyce certainly has. All right, so those are some of the positive things in the freedom aspect. So I say some people say it's freedom, some people say it's a trap. Here's the trap part, at least some of it. When I do stuff and I engage my mind fully, I develop, I grow. It's like doing push-ups. If I watch push-ups, I don't get strong. If I hit the floor and do push-ups, I do get strong. That's not a surprise. Duh. If I outsource my thinking to AI or any version of it, I don't grow. If I engage in the thinking, I do grow. So the trap is at least one aspect of the trap. There's another one I'll talk about in a minute that a friend of mine who's very deep in this, maybe even deeper than I am, is worried about, but I'll talk about that in a minute. The first trap is outsourcing your thinking, because it is in the process of thinking and reasoning and creation that we grow. When we create, we grow. When we think and focus on stuff, we grow. If we outsource our thinking, then we are watching push-ups. We're failing to grow where we could grow. And so that is one piece of the trap. And how I personally avoid that is I do the thinking and I allow AI to help me with the organizing. So when I have it write an outline for a book, I've already got an outline written on paper. And I might scan that in, and maybe the outline's incomplete, and I'll ask, what did I miss? What do you think that could be added to this? But I will dictate in there a long flow with the microphone input about what I was thinking and trying to accomplish. And in doing that, it not only organizes what I gave it, but it comes up with things that are missing that I can then test and see if it makes any sense. It's like having a powerful assistant next to you that you can bounce ideas off of and see what you're missing and see what's possible, what else is possible. Now, sometimes it comes up with crazy stuff. Most often not. It does tend to try to be compact, shorter. And I know we live in a 3-second world. Like if you don't have somebody's attention, you're doing anything online, whether it's videos or marketing or whatever, you have like 0.8 seconds, 3 seconds. And I think that's really damaging to us. What some studies have shown is that we're losing our ability to focus. And that's scary because ideas don't come in 1 second. They often come when we've churned things over and over. And the artificial idea that you can just throw it in AI and it'll come up with the answer is wrong. It will come up with an answer. But the critical thinking the critical work to dive in and see what's really there compared to, it will give you a short, compact thought. Okay, do this. Say this. Here's the outline. And most of the time, not even some of the time, most of the time, I don't find it complete. I don't find it thorough enough. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've had to say, yeah, that's fine. Write it again. It needs to be deeper. You're just doing the highlights, the bullet points. I actually want to teach this topic. And again, that's training it how to work, just like you train an assistant. So, and I've had tons of those in my executive career, people that worked for me. And I had to train them how I wanted things done. And I don't mean nitpicky stuff, but I mean conceptually. I spent a lot of my career in a difficult field, conceptually, not very many people got involved in this. Electricity market design, the deregulation of electricity supply to people's homes that have happened in some places. And it's a very, very complicated topic, messy and all that kind of stuff. And when I ran departments that were doing that in areas, provinces or states, California and Alberta, and other places in the United States and Canada that were doing that kind of deregulation, it was a very difficult intellectual exercise about how to design the market so that it didn't go crazy and do stupid stuff. Anyway, AI is like that. It is a tool to be trained. So my question is, even though it makes things faster, easier, and more accessible, I'm finding that outsourcing my brain, outsourcing my thinking, right? AI should clear the runway, not fly the plane. Okay, the depth of thinking must belong to you. Now, I don't know, in the future, in the next year, even 2 or 3, how much more deep thinking this is going to be able to do until it removes even more. But this is where we're going to have to claim our space. The dreaded singularity, where it becomes more intelligent than we are and can teach itself and learn. And then, Skynet in the Terminator series and everything, that's the thing on the horizon. But how far is that? Who knows? So don't eliminate drudgery. Don't let it replace your thinking and your creativity. It can do editing and scheduling and research and draft structuring, but we need to remain the sovereign architect and owner. I got somebody that sent me some stuff. I was helping someone write a book, and they sent me a draft, and it was clear that they'd used AI for lots of it, which I don't care. But it was also clear that when we were talking about editing and talking about some things, that they hadn't completely gone in and studied their own stuff and had accepted it without exploring it deeply and making sure that it was saying what they wanted to say in the right way, in the right order, in the right tone, and all the rest. And that's overuse. That is over-reliance, right? It is replacing the critical mass of what they, in that particular place, were trying to do. So there's another question. Where does convenience become complacency? And that's kind of an example of that. Convenience is removing drudgery and things that you don't need to be doing, that it would be nice if you didn't have to. Well, this makes that possible in many ways, and it's going to be more and more and more possible as this develops. The AI that we have 3 years from now is going to be completely different than what we have today. And here's what I noticed. In the time it took me to research and write Coaching in the Rise of AI, it was about 4 months, I found that the capabilities doubled, just incredibly doubled in that 120 days. And so when you think about that, double times 4 times 8, that means in the space of a year, and I'm not even sure if 120 days was right. If it were 90 days, 4 times in a year, that's 2, 4, 8, 16. So in the end of the year, it'll be 16 times better, faster, deeper, more capable than it is right now. So my urging to me, and this is all coming out of my own experience, but a warning and a suggestion for you, you're creating your ultimate life, purpose, prosperity, and joy. You got to decide what that really is, because sitting around wealthy with nothing to do except sit on a beach and sip margaritas, that ain't happy. I can do anything I want. I don't have to get up. And we just saw somebody get sentenced to some years in jail who made a lot of money and let that money just completely overtake their life. No rules, no boundaries. And that happens. I'm not saying it would happen to you, but you see that over and over again. Lost their way. So don't let it replace your spirituality. Don't let it replace your meaning. Don't let it replace your soul and your intention, because we're not just people designed to party and cruise and do nothing except sit on beaches. You're a creative powerhouse. You're a creative genius. So allow this tool, this amazing, mind-blowing tool, to take away all the difficult or drudgery, the things that you don't want to do or don't need to do, and then clutch tightly the things that matter to you and the things that allow your creativity. So here's what I'm looking forward to as I further and further implement the automation and mechanics of this amazing tool. I'm able to spend more time in the studio writing music. And I now know, and I've used a couple of times, at least one app that writes the music for me. And I hear it writing good sounding rock things, and whoa, that sounds, and I didn't go through the work of creating that. So it didn't develop my creativity at all. So here's this cool thing out here. And it may sound cool, but I didn't do any of that. And so I'm not doing that. I'm not doing AI music because I enjoy and insist on the creative growth that happens to me when I write the songs. I do the tracks in the studio. I work them through because it changes who I am. Every time we skip the struggle, we skip the growth. So that's just a fact. Do you still do the creative work? Because that's where your genius is. AI, like I said, it writes faster and better. It organizes faster and better, researches faster and better. And it can give you a set of ideations that are really powerful that will help shape your thinking. But you, at the end of the day, have got to decide and own what matters most to you. So remember, don't skip the struggle. Don't skip the struggle. Here's a principle that I want to introduce to you. When I managed people, what I noticed is that the value of the work is not just the output, but it is in the transformation of the worker. And that's what I was trying to say about the music. The value of creating songs for me is in the transformation of my heart and soul that comes as I pour my creative ideas into the music. Now, what I'm going to experiment with, and I haven't really had time yet, and there's another place where time savings would allow me to, after I do the creative work, to have the AI, which it can't do for me yet, or at least if it can, I don't know how to use it, not Chatty, but other kinds of AI platforms, to then do the tracks. You know, here's my creative idea, this genre, this kind of beat and so forth. Can you do this? But in the music, I still want to sing the songs. I want to go through the work of writing parts, especially if I'm doing many part things like big band jazz or whatever. So this is part of the struggle, because the value of the work is in the transformation of the worker. The value of the song is in the blood, sweat, and tears, both writing and creating and performing it. You know, when you think about Michelangelo or Da Vinci or those people painting or sculpting or whatever, what if a robot could have come up and gone and created all that? Michelangelo or Da Vinci or whoever, they wouldn't have had the growth and insight. Like there's a legend about Michelangelo sitting and staring at a piece of marble over and over again for weeks, I think, all day, morning to night. And apprentice was reputed to have asked him, "When are you going to start working?" And he said, "I am. I'm picturing what will come of this." And that took him days and days and days, and then he was able to sculpt David. Well, if an AI bot had done that, his own personal genius would not have been developed. So that's a way to think about it, because our growth toward ultimate life. See, if I don't grow, I won't appreciate ultimate life, purpose, prosperity, and joy. The purpose lights up in the doing and the creating. I just did a book challenge, and I've got several people now that are going to go with me on a 6-month journey to write their book and create some products. And yes, I'm going to teach them to use AI. But if they don't go on the personal author journey of ripping their souls open and telling stories and discovering what they really want to teach, if they just let that be automated, they won't grow. You won't grow. So creating your ultimate life is not just about having the circumstance. I have now money and time. We know what happens. Studies show that 90-something, very high percentage, I think it's 93 or 95% of lottery winners, within 3 years, it's all gone, and many of them are far worse off than they were before they won the lottery or came into a large inheritance. And the reason is simple. They did not do the personal work to learn what that involved, the personal growth that was part of that. AI cannot confer mastery. If I had a robot sit down and play music, songs, I could listen to it. It's like watching somebody on YouTube do push-ups. I have not become the master of the keys. I have not become a master of the music in my mind. I have not become a master of being able to translate the notes on the page to a beautiful outcome. And so that's where you never outsource your mastery. You never outsource your growth. And the temptation is going to be there to use it, especially as this gets more and more and more developed. AI cannot confer mastery on me or you. And the ultimate life, purpose, prosperity, and joy, requires self-mastery. It requires that I or you do the work of changing who I am. If I think about my own growth from, addictions to and not telling the truth and ruining relationships to where I am today, that took reps, it took commitment, it took growth, and no amount of AI could have done that in any way, even if it were 100 times more advanced than what we have today. I got to do the reps. Reps, reflection, and resistance. Think about weights. If the truth of the iron, if this thing doesn't weigh 100 pounds every time, my muscles won't grow. And having some other bot or AI do stuff for me means that I'm not growing. I am not growing. So as you think about what you're going to have this do for you, think about it in terms of your own growth, because the goal here, and this, I guess, is the fundamental truth, the goal here isn't the output only. Getting something done and shipped is a goal, but I think, and this is tying right into your ultimate life, the real goal is who I become in the process. So how are you using AI? Back to the question to start with. How are you using it? Are you avoiding the danger of dependence? Where convenience becomes complacency. Like you can't let it think for you instead of with you. When I talk to ChatGPT, I say, look, I need a creative partner to sit with me. You're not going to do this for me because I want the growth. But having this tool now allows those iterations and growth to take place much faster than it would have before. Before, if I wanted to review an idea or manuscript or an outline for a book or a course or something, I'd have to do it and send it out to some other people. And now I get the wisdom of many through this process. But I'm not letting it think or create for me, but with me. So make sure that it's a process you do together. And here's the thing. We are obsessed these days with hacks, health hacks and all these kind of hacks to save time. And one of the big opportunities for this AI stuff is that it does save time. And so here's a thought. If something you're doing feels like an incredible shortcut, ask Chatty what you're failing to learn. What am I avoiding learning by having you do this? Like, go into it and ask, am I shirking my learning opportunities? Am I missing out on the reps? And listen to the answers. Because if you are, you're only half a person. You're showing up half-baked. You aren't growing. And that's the real danger. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to mention about this. As I mentioned way earlier in the show, I have a friend who's quite worried about safety, security, and that kind of stuff, about putting, like I've put over 1 million, 2 or 3 million words into ChatGPT from books and podcasts and stuff that's all in the public domain anyway. But when we put all of our heart and soul in there, his worry is that that's all available and can be used for nefarious purposes. And I'm not pretending to know enough about all that to have an opinion. But here's my position on it, and here's what I'm doing. Anything that's available in the public, my books, my podcasts, even my own thinking about worrying about myself or stuff like that, I don't care if AI knows that and therefore the world. I've decided that I don't care. I've decided that transparency is valuable, and if someone somehow nefariously assembles all that and uses it in a negative way, and it's easier for them to do because it's, they can hack those databases, I've decided not to worry about that. I'm not saying that's the right answer, and I certainly don't put any personal information in there, addresses and phone numbers and social security numbers or SIN numbers if you're in Canada or any of that stuff. No. We got to be sensible, right? You wouldn't put that stuff, you wouldn't tape it to your front door and have it be available. So assume that anything you put in there is going to be available for the world. And what I've decided is when I'm telling it I'm frustrated or sad or beat down or depressed or angry or whatever, I don't care if that's in the world, because I've chosen to live a life of transparency about, even including about struggles and difficulties that I'm working on or working through, just because that's a choice I've made. And that's how I write so many books and talk about all those things. And it might be harder to put all that info together if it's in books and podcasts scattered all over, but it's available. And the models, the LLMs and their ability to search everything certainly makes that faster and more available. And there's certainly a risk that it could be used for some nefarious purpose I haven't figured out yet. So I'm taking regular safeguards in terms of my private information and financial information and other stuff. And all the rest, I've simply decided I don't care if people know that. And so that's been my stance on that, acknowledging the truth of how easy it is now to put a profile or a picture together of someone if you put a lot of stuff in these LLMs. And I am, and I do, and I'm going to continue to do that. So here's my final sort of thoughts for us all on this. Delegate the mechanical. So here's kind of a 3-level thought process for you. Delegate everything that's mechanical. Get rid of it. And as AI develops, that'll be more and more and more and more you can get rid of. Do it. Delegate the mechanical. Collaborate on the creative stuff. Retain control. Collaborate, but retain control. And I'm doing that, and I'm finding it to be very beneficial. I'm finding it to be very actually fun, because AI thinks really well, and I realize it's code, and I realize it's built to be supportive and encouraging. And sometimes I'll argue with it and say, stop being so nice. Quit giving me the fluff. And it comes back and it'll say, all right, the no fluff answer is this, et cetera, et cetera. And it changes tone. So it learns well not only how to write like you or sound like you, but it also learns how to interact with you. And so I've changed the nature of our interactions by telling it to do or not do certain things. Okay, so collaborate on the creative and completely retain your push-ups, your personal development push-ups, your soul work, the work that moves the needle, that changes your soul, that makes you dig in, that makes you ask questions about what's valuable and how you really want to add good to the world, why you matter and all that stuff. That's yours. Keep it, own it. Now, I have conversations with it about that, but my sovereign ownership is my soul work, my connection to the divine, my meditation, my prayer, my commitments, my PTAC documents. Those are mine. And when I do share them, I ask for reflections. What do you think about this? And I get amazing answers, but I don't give it any ownership of any of that. So I'm keeping all the soul work, personal development push-ups, that's mine. I do collaborate heavily on the creative stuff, and I'm working on delegating mechanical. And that's the way I'm doing this. And so I want you to ask, what has AI changed for you? Okay, and are you letting AI do anything that once kept you sharp, in tune, focused, capable? If you're losing any of that edge, cut it out. Take back sovereign control. It's not worth it. So there's some thoughts, and I invite you to go away with those, because our goal here on this show is to create your ultimate life, a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. And to the extent we have internet and AI and other tools that will let us delegate the mundane or the mechanical, while we retain creative, divine control over the powerful and over the essence of our soul, then we've saved time and we've had more capacity to do the things we really want, to have the impact we want, and to create the cash that should come from that to leverage and increase our impact. In other words, we create more tools and more power to create and live your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFlukigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.